the concluding chapter to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. So The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King opened back in 2003, and this was one of the biggest movies ever made. I mean, the lines and crowds of people waiting to see this movie was incredible. I mean, everyone was head over heels for the first two movies. And then this movie opened, and it was the second movie in the world to make over $1 billion. It tied the record for the most Oscars earned for a single movie. Like, if this movie failed, I'm pretty sure there would have been, like, riots in the streets or something. So anyways, the movie opens, and you see this cool flashback detailing the history of Gollum. It's really interesting seeing him just become the Gollum that we all know, because he had to kill one of his friends to get the ring. That scene is just really creepy and unsettling, that something like that, just so small like the ring, can cause something like that to happen to a creature like Gollum. Because you're able to see that Gollum was a hobbit before he got the ring, but then afterwards he just becomes this thing. I don't even know what he is. He's Gollum. That's what he is. He's Gollum. So anyways, we cut right back to where the Two Towers left off. Frodo, Sam, Gollum, they're all trying to get to Mordor. And Gandalf, Aragorn, and their crew, they finally meet up with Merry and Pippin, and they go and meet with Sauron. You see in the Two Towers that the Ents basically just destroyed Isengard, and they actually don't show this part in the theatrical version. But in the extended version, you see that Gandalf and Sauron, they have this little conversation. In the theatrical version, Gandalf's just like, oh, just leave him, he has no power anymore. But he was like the main antagonist for the last two movies, and you're just gonna leave him? No, you can't do that. Come on now. So they're talking. Saruman says that Sauron is ready to launch his final assault on Middle-earth. Aragorn gets brought up in the conversation. Saruman's all like, you do not think this ranger will become king of Gondor? Then after that, Gandalf breaks Saruman's staff. Grima Wormtongue stabs Saruman, and he just falls down. And then he gets impaled on the spinning wheel, and the dude he's dead. Yeah, for some reason this was all cut out of the theatrical version. I don't know why. The movie was already 200 minutes. I mean, what's a couple more minutes after that? Anyways, Pippin finds Sauron's like seeing eyeglass that he has or whatever that thing was. He finds that, he gets a little curious about it, bad things happen. Basically, Sauron now thinks that Pippin has the ring. So Gandalf takes Pippin to Gondor, and now we're introduced to Denethor, who is actually Boromir and Faramir's father. Now you see Denethor in the extended version of the Two Towers, which kind of explains Faramir's motives in the last movie. But I mean, the guy is just such a jerk. He hates Faramir so much, he loves Boromir. He's completely torn up when he finds out that Boromir's dead. There's this one scene where Denethor is like, hey Faramir, go take this town back. And Faramir is trying to tell him, he's like, dude, I don't have enough people. We are all going to die. Denethor is just there and he's like, huh, yeah, I know. Like, dude, he's sending his own son to death. Sick individual, let me tell you. So back on the other side of the spectrum, you still have Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, and you see Gollum is really starting to put his plan into motion to kill Frodo and Sam. In one of the first scenes of the movie, Gollum is talking to himself, his reflection, you know. He's planning to take them up to Shelob. He's all like, yes, yes, precious, up, up, up the stairs they go. And when they go in, there's no coming out. Yeah, he's a treacherous little dude in this thing, but Sam realizes that. See, Sam knows what's going on. He can tell Gollum's leading them straight into a trap, but Frodo can't realize that because his mind is just so corrupted by the ring. He sees Gollum as someone who can understand his pain because Gollum had the ring for the last 500 years. So he's not going to send him away, even though his best friend Sam is telling him, dude, the guy just said he was going to kill us. And you really see the ring is starting to weigh on Frodo even more than it was in the Two Towers, which causes him to make some, you know, illogical decisions. The scene is that they're climbing up Cirith Ungol. Gollum frames Sam for a couple things, and then Frodo tells Sam just to get out of there. There's such a sad scene. Sam's tearing up. He's like, you don't actually mean this, do you? Frodo is just cold, stone solid, saying, we don't need you, Sam. Get out of here. Just seeing everything these two went through in the last two movies, and then just to see Frodo just throw him away like that, this movie's an emotional ride, let me tell you. Now, obviously, the title, The Return of the King, is in reference to Aragorn, and this is the movie where you see him step up and become the king. I think Viggo Mortensen does a great job in this entire trilogy, but really, Return of the King is where he gets the spotlight. There's some really cool scenes with him when Elrond gives him the sword, and then when he's going in to find the ghost people to help them win the battle. You know, they're all at the entrance to that cave, and Legolas and Gimli are there. They're like, dude, I don't know about this. We should, maybe I'll hang back here. Aragorn just looks at them and he goes, I do not fear death. And he just goes straight into that mountain. That is the king of Gondor, not some steward who sends his own son to death. This entire movie is just so big and epic. You see all those swooping shots with the dragons just launching people over the hills of Minas Tirith. It's crazy, just the scope of this entire movie, it's just epic. There's no other way to say it, really. This movie, you even get to see Theoden step up. I mean, he was kind of, I don't want to say he was whiny in the Two Towers. He was kind of wimpy in the Two Towers, where he was just kind of retreating with his people back to Helm's Deep. And he is leading them, but not to the best of his ability. He's trying to stay out of the entire conflict going on in Middle-earth, but it just keeps pushing him in. Before they go into battle, he's giving them this big speech. He's all clacking swords. He's all, and the red sun rises. That speech, let me tell you, there's a lot of speeches in this movie. That speech it's awesome. Actually, they're all awesome, but in particular, this speech was really cool. Meanwhile, Frodo doesn't have Sam for protection anymore. Now Gollum has led Frodo into the trap in Shelob's lair. And Frodo fends himself off for a little bit, but then Shelob ends up getting the better of him. Gollum ends up coming back and attacking him. He's in a tight spot. Shelob has him, like, woven up in that, whatever it's called. You know, when spiders, like, wrap their prey up in food, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, anyway, Sam comes back for Frodo. He has Sting, and he's got the Light of Elendale on the other hand. And just the way that you see him, this simple gardener from the Shire, step up and take on a giant spider. And also win against the giant spider. That's impressive. Then Frodo gets taken up that tower, and then he goes up there too, and he's like slashing away at all these orcs. I'm telling you, dude. Sam is a beast. Now back at Minas Tirith, they finally ended up being able to fend off everything. Denethor just ran off a cliff. They're thinking to themselves, okay, we got a couple decisions to make. Frodo is getting closer to Mordor now, and there are a lot of orcs in Mordor. What to do with that? We could draw all the orcs out, giving Frodo that chance that he needs to get up to Mount Doom. And then someone, I forget who says this, I think it's Éomer, but he's basically saying, dude, we don't have the men to fight off all those orcs. And then Aragorn tells him, it's not for ourselves, but we can give Frodo this chance. I mean, that's insane. That is sacrifice right there. And now they've come to it, the final battle of Middle-earth, the Battle of the Black Gate. Another scene that they cut out of the theatrical release and put in the extended version. You've got Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, Merry Pippin. They're all up at the Black Gate. They're talking to the mouth of Sauron. Now, Sauron doesn't really have a physical body, so this is basically the guy, the messenger for Sauron. Gandalf is giving them a final chance. He's saying Sauron needs to depart these lands, never to return it again. The mouth of Sauron is like, really? And then he shows them Frodo's mithril vest. He throws it to them. The hobbits start freaking out. They're tearing up. They're all like, oh, Frodo! Gandalf is there, he's like, silence! Because Sauron still doesn't know that Frodo has the ring. He probably suspects it. I mean, he now knows that Pippin doesn't have it. But yeah, the entire reasoning for this battle to happen, that almost just went out the window. Anyways, Aragorn, you can tell, he's really disheartened. He kind of believes it. It's hard to tell, but, I mean, I would believe it if I was him. Let's be honest here. He goes up, he just cuts the dude's head off. He's like, I do not believe it. I will not. Even though, you know, he kind of does. They're all preparing for the battle. Everyone's kind of disheartened now. And then Aragorn gives the speech of all speeches. Like, this is like Braveheart status speeches. I mean, this might even be better than Braveheart. I know that's kind of like blasphemy, but I'm telling you, this is a good speech. I was going to do the speech right here, but I can't do it justice. So I'm going to put a link down below to the speech. Check it out. It'll get you pumped. Anyways, they're all getting ready for the battle. Aragorn's leading the charge, and then you see the eye of Sauron staring straight at Aragorn. He's talking to him. He's trying to discourage him. He's telling him, dude, your entire hope for humanity is dead. There is no way you can win this fight. If you want to join me, you can. Or you can go and die along with all the other people behind you. Aragorn just looks back at them. He looks back at Gandalf, and he goes, for Frodo. And he just charges straight into the battle. Merry and Pippin follow right behind him, and then everyone else behind him just charges into the battle. Again, this movie, big, epic, awesome. There is no other words to describe this movie other than those. Meanwhile, Frodo and Sam, they're climbing up Mount Doom, and you can tell Frodo barely has any life in him left. The ring is just becoming heavier, both physically and mentally to him. He collapses, and Sam's there. He's like, do you remember the Shire, Mr. Frodo? You know, trying to put Frodo in his happy place. And then Frodo looks up at him, and he goes, I can't remember the taste of bread, or the sound of the water rushing. All I can see is fire. And you can see with Elijah Wood's just big wide eyes that he has, just the look he gives, it looks like he is standing at the gates of hell. It's crazy. But then Sam goes down there and he goes, let's be rid of it then. I may not be able to carry it for you, but I can carry you. And he just picks Frodo up and just starts climbing up the mountain. A boiling hot active volcano with a dude on his back. And just the music that plays during that scene, epic. That is true friendship right there. Eventually they start to make it up the mountain more. Gollum finds them, he ambushes them. And here's another scene in the extended version. I see why it was cut, but I just kind of like it. Gollum's down there, he's choking Frodo, and Frodo's just like, you swore on the precious. Smeagol promised! Gollum just looks down at him and he goes, Smeagol lied. I wish I could do a better Gollum impression, I really can't. But that scene is just a slight twisted humor to it. I don't really know how to describe it. But you can tell from Andy Serkis' acting in that scene that Smeagol is just gone. Gollum has full reign of that body now. Which I actually have heard some people say when Frodo and Gollum are tussling in Shelob's lair and Frodo, you know, like launches him down that cliff. People say that the reason he survived is that Smeagol actually died, but the Gollum persona took over the entire body. Which I guess would make sense because, I mean, after that, Gollum's not really trying to help him at all in the movie. It's a cool little theory when you think about it. Anyways, they finally made it into the tower. Frodo ran up, Sam's right behind him. All Frodo has to do is just drop the ring into the lava. He is standing over the lava right there. Sam is right there. He's telling him, dude, just let the ring go. Just drop it down. Frodo's there. He's staring at the ring. You know, the ring is doing its little ambiance or whatever. You know, it's all eerie and kind of high-pitched and, you know, it's doing its thing. It's really dark because then Frodo turns around. You see that Frodo has seen the ring as the precious. He looks at Sam and he goes, the ring is mine. He rips it off the chain. That big choir music just starts playing and then Sam's there. He's like, no. Frodo puts the ring on. He turns invisible. Sam is there. He's just like, no. The entire quest is basically down the drain by now. Sam's freaking out. He doesn't even know where Frodo is. And then Gollum comes behind him and knocks him out. And then Gollum jumps on Frodo. They're tussling for the ring and then Gollum just bites his finger off. That's just a crazy scene when you think about it. And then Gollum finally has the ring. He's just clutching it, jumping up and down, doing his precious dance or whatever it is. Then Frodo's down for a second. He's clutching his hand. It's all filled up with blood. And then he goes up to Gollum. They tussle, they fight, and then they go down. Gollum ends up falling down with the ring into the lava. He's just clutching it, and then he just splats right on the edge of the lava right there. And right there, even to his last thought, the ring is right there. He's fading down into the lava, and he's just like, oh, just save the precious. He reaches his hand out to it, and then he just sinks down and dies. And now finally, the ring is dead. It's done. Sauron is defeated. Barad-dûr, the tower with the eye, it just starts crumbling down. Everyone out in the field, they're all like, Frodo, he's alive? The world is not going to get blown to hell today. That's awesome. Frodo's clinging onto the edge of the cliff. Sam ends up pulling him up. I bet you can tell, Frodo, he almost lets go. Because the ring is gone and he did kind of grow attached to the ring at that point. That's really crazy. You can see him there. His life is just basically drained. Sam's looking at him and he goes, don't you let go. But then, you know, Sam pulls him up. They're all good. The eagles come to carry him out. It's all good. Now, a lot of people gripe about the ending to this movie. I don't really know why. I guess it does have multiple endings if you really think about it. But you need a really big wrap-up like this to really conclude the entire 12-hour trilogy. Frodo wakes up, he's back in Gondor, the Fellowship is all reunited except for, you know, Boromir, of course. Then Aragorn gets crowned king, and this is a really cool scene. Aragorn's walking down the aisle right there. He comes up to the hobbits, they're all bowing down to him, and then he goes to them and he goes, my friends, you bow to no one. And then Aragorn, the king of the human race, basically just bows down to them, and the entire congregation at Minas Tirith bows down to the hobbits. You know, Howard Shore's Shire theme starts playing, and it echoes back to that line that Gadriel says in the first movie. Something about how hobbits will shape the fortunes of us all. That scene really just brought the whole trilogy full circle for me. Then the hobbits get back to the Shire. Sam ends up getting married. That's kind of a funny scene too. You can see that look of determination on his face when he goes up to talk to Rosie. Which, I mean, if I took on a giant spider and basically saved the living world, I'd be like that too. Don't lie, you would also. But something that's interesting that this movie touches on is that there are some wounds that time just can't heal. After carrying the Ring of Power for a year, you can't just go back to your simple life. But anyways, the elves are all leaving Middle-earth. They're going to the west, which is basically like their heaven. Gandalf and Bilbo go with them, and then Frodo gets invited onto it too. Which is a really sad and touching scene because the hobbits are all crying. He goes up to Merry and Pippin, they're all tearing up when they hug. And then he goes up to Sam, his friend who's been with him to the bitter end for his entire life, basically. He gives him Bilbo's red book. He says, there's a couple more pages in there. Finish it. And then they're all crying. It's all sad. Frodo says goodbye. Then Sam returns home and Frodo gives a cool monologue. Sam closes his front door and then the end. That's it. And then the credits roll, and this is actually a really cool part of the movie. You know, Into the West, the theme song is playing. And then you see portraits of all the people. It really feels like the ending of a saga. Like, even when you've been sitting on a couch for the last, like, 11, 12 hours, if you're marathoning these movies, you still just have to sit there for a second because these movies are just so emotionally draining. You just kind of have to sit there and just take it all in for a second. At least that's what I have to do. The Lord of the Rings Return of the King is one of the greatest movies ever made, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy itself is just the pinnacle of awesome filmmaking. The Return of the King is my favorite part, even though I like grouping them all together as one movie. And the Lord of the Rings itself is one of my favorite movies of all time, if not my favorite. The Lord of the Rings The Return of the King gets an A+. Like, how do you rate a movie like this any lower than that? It's impossible to, really. So the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we're just going to talk about the whole thing now. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Comment down below, let me know, and thanks for watching this video. If you guys like it, then click here to see more.